So very interesting, you get a Sakedish. And it's really the last of the Kuntas Acharin. It's the last of the Kuntas Acharin. You hear? After this we have more or less Igeres HaKedesh. But this is the last of the Kuntas Acharin. And the idea that's mentioned over here was actually mentioned in previous Igeres Kedesh, in previous Kuntas Acharin. And the Alter Rebbe is talking about it. Let's understand the details of halacha that are not common at all. Page 318. Kuf Nun Tes Amar Beis. And perhaps they've never ever occurred. They're never going to happen in the future. For example, the particulars of the laws of Pigul. Right? What Pigul is Machshava. Machshava Chutz Lizmani. There are a lot of weird scenarios about Pigul, Kahai Gavna, and so forth. So in the previous Igeres HaKedesh, the Alter Rebbe made a distinction. On top of page Kuf Nun Ches Amar Aleph. Could be someplace else also, which I'm not finding, where he said that there's a very big difference between learning halacha, which is negei l'maisa b'peil mamish, and learning halacha, which is not negei l'maisa b'peil mamish. Halacha, which is not negei l'maisa b'peil mamish, is not mamshach da'atzmos of atzilus lamata, right? Only those in yanim of halacha, which are negei l'maisa b'peil mamish, is the same thing as the mitzvah itself, which is mamshach halacha l'maisa down here. The kelim of atzilus down here. This was what he said in the last Igeres HaKedesh. Now the Alter Rebbe said, let's analyze Take. What is the point of learning halacha negei l'maisa? If it's true, when you learn halacha without negei l'maisa, you're not mamshach halakus lamata, because it's not connected to kelim ta'asiyah. So why b'chlal learn it? You know, when I taught this Igeres HaKedesh, I gave them the Hagdama that a father was a Rav and the son was a Rosh Yeshiva. So the son comes to his father and he asks him halachas. So the father says to the son, "L'may nafka mina." What difference does it make? So the son says, "What do you mean l'may nafka mina? Yagdal teira v'yadid. You have to have a difference. Make teira great and beautiful." And the father says, "If it's not halach, it's not negela. There's no nafka mina l'peil. Who cares?" The difference between how a Rosh Yeshiva thinks and how a Rav thinks. This Igeres HaKedesh explains Al Pi Kabbalah. What's the point of learning theoretical questions of halacha that are not legei l'maisa? That in the previous Igeres HaKedesh we said it's not mamshach the atmos of kelim v'atilas anyway. So why learn them? So here goes the hezbed al pisod. It's known like this. Anything which is asr in the world. Now, if it's in the world, that means it's l'maisa. But yesh le'sheinu shumak chaim has a root and a source of life, but klipes in the spiritual klipes. Sheilafkin, if not for the fact that it has a source in the spiritual klipes, it could not exist as a reality in this world. Bilti ashpal, not a flow from above. Everybody knows that zeh le'umma zeh asa likim, just like the spiritual words of klipa, the spiritual words of kedusha, and just like the spiritual words of kedusha, there are also spiritual words of klipa. And just like everything down here which is kedusha gets a chayis, some ruchnius, the same is true of klipa. Every klipa down here is a chayis and ruchnius in the higher worlds. Even a person who brushes and combs is here. And the like. This is such an amazing hashkacha pratis. Because today is Sunday, Pashas Vayeshev, and we learn about Yosef HaTzadik being Mesalsal B'Shaydei. And it says in Chassidus, it says from Zayar, that Yosef HaTzadik was punished because he was Mesalsal B'Shaydei, and he created Klipa, he created the Chesreinis through the fact that he was Mesalsal B'Shaydei. Although Chassidus explains that Yosef HaTzadik was Tzadik El Yed, he's from the Shama Dema, and Faket, Yosef HaTzadik was able to be involved in Gashmis, didn't affect him adversely, but in Kabbalah it's brought that the fact that Yosef brushed and combed his hair, V'unad, Rashi says he used to make with his eyes, to make himself look attractive, it was a from Klipa. Which means that Lamaila, there's a Klipa that represents this Silsul B'Shaydei, which Yosef HaTzadik brought down into this world, and therefore he was punished for it. Ukahai Gavna and so forth. Mekabel Chayusei Beregezu. One is getting Chayis at that instant, Me'echolas HaKlipes, from the chambers of Klipa where this inyan is represented. So if there's an inyan which comes into this Gash musical world which is no good, you should know it has a makkah in Klipas. Now the Alter Rebbe says, and therefore, this is the reason. There's usefulness in studying halachas and in yonim. Which are not legei l'maisa. Gam prati yisur, even though it's particularly yisur. Shalei bol de ma'isa that never manifested in this physical world of action ever. Be'el mazah gashmi in this physical world. The Alter Rebbe, there's still a point of learning them. Why? Nevertheless, shara sheikh hayusa mehein b'mitziyah be'el mamish. The roots of the life of all of these possible klipas, which never come down, already exist actually beichos klipas in the chambers of klipas. In other words, if there are Avedas which have never occurred, the chaya is that those Avedas could exist if they're written in Teda. If in Teda you have a heichatimtze, in Lomdus, Dersh Bapeh, or in Teda, in Chumash, even if that theoretical heichatimtze never manifests in the world, the fact that the Teda speaks about is a simon that in some spiritual place it exists. V'gam, moreover,
but you don't get power to by learning them.
Forget, you're fixing them through learning them. The whole point is that in the Teda there's a makar of everything, including the makar of klipas, and when you learn Teda, you're mavaded it. When it comes into Gashmias, it's not enough to be mavaded through Teda, you have to be mavaded through action. When it's in Ruchnius, the world, you're mavaded through Teda alone. I'm not even such detailed shuchali as that's possible. That never have occurred b'mitzias in the physical world. Still, if they're discussed in Teda, they have a ruchnius de kamakah. For example, Tos v'shgogas, the different mistakes that people make about ma'aser. Shetov v'karlachiyah sirichul. If a person lists, he's counting the 10 sheep, and he calls the 9th one the 10th, the 10th one the 9th, the 10th one the 11th, and so forth. Ukai gadna and so forth. L'shacheh b'mezid, that they can't possibly be intentional, can't be done on purpose. Li'yashlip b'sheira zed, the klipa should rest on it, because if you do it on purpose, it doesn't happen. It only works when you do it by mistake. So you're talking about an inyan of a mistake that could only be a mistake, and it's a mistake which never occurs. Even an inyan which is only a mistake and that never occurred, if you deliberately call the 9th the 10th, it doesn't work.
No, I'm saying, why do you say it's not working? Just saying
Heichatimtze, it never happened. Let's say. So you have two things: A, it never happened; B, it's not even a zodin. It can't be intentional. It can only be an accident. So l'chaynu, you would think that such an inyan should not have a makar zaktanein. It still has a makar. And now the Alter Rebbe adds noch hakvetch. Usually, if it's possible, the kahagan that in such a case, eini b'metzias, it doesn't exist in its form. Behechos that klipa, it doesn't exist in its form in klipas. Now, when you read the words of the Alter Rebbe, you can get the impression that the Alter Rebbe is saying that when an aveda which could happen b'shegeg never happens, doesn't have a makar in klipas. Tight to the Tzemach Tzedek, no. And this Tzemach Tzedek l'chayla is a big chiddush. Nidali mashakosov. It seems to me, says the Tzemach Tzedek, what he's writing, the yuchali is that it could be that it doesn't have tisan echolos. Alma, says the Tzemach Tzedek, it seems to me that the Alter Rebbe is saying leibidale. He's not sure. Mishum da'ashashgoges boys minega. It's possible that an aveda which is done by accident only has a shadish and nega. Says the Alter Rebbe came therefore yeshleimar. Says someone said yeshleimar. The yeshleim shadish. They do have a shadish. Now, but then it's beicholos the nega. In other words, the Tzemach Tzedek is saying that the Alter Rebbe is not saying that an aveda which could be done by accident, it never happens, doesn't have a makar l'mayla. He's saying that an aveda that could be done by accident doesn't have a mayla in klipas mamish, but it does have a makar in klipas nega. So the Tzemach Tzedek is machadish, is that l'mayla there's two types of klipas, which is a big chiddush. There's the klipas which are against klipas nega, and there's klipas that are against shalosh klipas meis lagamri. So any aveda which could happen and never happens has a makar in the klipas, which is the makar of shalosh klipas meis lagamri. These shkagas, Alter Rebbe says, I'm not sure. Maybe it's in the makar of shalosh klipas meis lagamri, maybe it's in klipas nega. But the Tzemach Tzedek says pshat not Rebbe, but it does have a makar l'mayla, even though it's only a shegeg, and it's a shegeg which has never occurred. See, when it comes to kedusha, there's no shaila. What's the point of learning mitzvahs aseh? Because when you learn it, so you're learning the mitzvah. But why would you learn halachas leishchichi about lavim, about isurim? It's not b'mitzias. So the Rosh Hashiva says yakal teira v'yadish. The Rav says don't bother. Kabbalah says birurim. You're correcting the klipas which exist l'mayla, which have never nimshach l'mata. Mikol mokem, nevertheless, akol panim yeshna b'mitzias. They exist in their form. Lahavdil, to be separated. B'chochmei la, in chochmei la. Shenispashta b'prat zeh, which expanded in this detail. Moshe Rabbeinu alav hashalom b'Sinai to Moshe Rabbeinu at Sinai. K'maimed, the Gemara says, shekol talmid vasek asad l'chadish yachol, anything which a diligent, a sincere, devout student will be created, comes from Eibush Rabbeinu at Sinai, and he gives you the example of v'chol prati boys Rabbi Yirmiyah, v'karachte v'chol perek dal d'chol, and all the theoretical questions that he used to ask. But now the Alter Rebbe is going into a different point, and this second point desires a little bit of Hagdama. So far, the Gezek is very pashut. You should know every shaila in Tezrah has a makar l'mayla. If it's a negative shaila, has a makar negativity l'mayla. If it doesn't happen, b'gashmias, it exists in the ruchnius, the words have to fix it. Now he's adding another kvetch. How did it get there? How did other get in the Elam Masal Yenim that are Klipa. And the Teretz is, it comes from Chachmei Law, which is Kedusha. Chachmei Law is the mark of the whole creation. Chachmei Law is the mark of the whole Torah. Now, just like you can understand that Chachmei Law is the mark of the whole Torah and the mark of the whole creation, and there's an enormous difference between creation and Torah, although they both come from Chachmei Law, but the way they go through Hishtashlis, this becomes Elamis, this remains Torah. The same is true in Torah Gufa. Chachmei Law of Torah has in itself everything. It has the Kedusha and the marker of the Klippas. The difference is the Kedusha, which is in Chachmei Law, is Chachmei Law itself. The Klippas marker in Chachmei Law is an Inyan of Yotzer Mimenu. It's part of Chachmei Law, but when it comes down, it becomes separate from Chachmei Law. And the only reason the Eibishter included these sparks of Klippa in the Chachmei Law is that when they come down, we should fix them. So when they come down into this world and in Aveda, the fixing them Pashat means through a tikkun. When they remain in the Elam Masal Yenim, we fix them through limud. So when you learn halachas of a heted, l'shchiche klau, you're being misaken. The klipa diklamaila, which the original shadish was mamish chachmei law. What does he say? He said, "Akaponim yeshter b'metzias lahavdol b'chachmei law." It's including chachmei law, but in the derech of avdollah. Yes, yes. But the way to chachmei law, it's bottle. It's like saying in the Eibishter does Avodah Zarah exist? Yes, but it's bottle. It becomes nikir when there's a havdalah. The klipas become a metzias when they're separated, but they come from chachmei law. Tzimtzum, bria, b'pashtus. Ki yispashtus chachmei law. The expansion of chachmei law, b'bechinas ein sof, hamalubash b'bapel mamish. Chachmei law has inside of itself ein sof, which is infinite, actually, and therefore in Torah there's infinite detail. Every individual halacha, shad, is a gate, or to use the more correct translation of the word shad, is a hair. Sad, right? Shad and sad. A gate is a big thing, a hair is a thin thing, and halachas are compared to hairs. Nimshech mi chachmei law, which comes from chachmei law, the Yossi Berata, which is the father of the daughter. The daughter would be Teira Shabbat. Umelubash ba, and chachmei law is revealed in it. Umimenu nimshech umeslavish, if mitzvahs they're drawn down and revealed itself in bri, bebri, tzir nasiya. So the Alter Rebbe, moreover, you should know ki enikas haklipes me'acharayim the yitzvir the kedusha. That klipa gets its nourishment from the back of the 10 spheres of kedusha. In other words, just like b'chlal, klipa gets chayes from kedusha, so too negative halachas get chayes from Torah. Ubefrat milevushim the yitzviras the biyah, especially from the garments of the 10 spheres of biyah. In other words, the 10 spheres are of kedusha, and that kedusha klipa can't really leech off them. But when you add levushim is a denser garment than the Yitzviras themselves. Through the Levushim, Klipa gets chayes easier. And now the second Ubefrat the Yitzira Asiyah. Especially from Yitzira Asiyah, Hamorav Meklipis, where even the 10 Spheres are mixed up with Klipis, Kenei Dashi Nikotam Mechenes HaLevush. So he says three things. Bechlal from Esas Spheres Abiyah, Ubefrat from the Levushim of the Esas Spheres Abiyah, Ubeprate Prati is from the Levushim, the 10 Spheres of Yitzira and Asiyah, Klipa gets chayes. Like the Alter Rebbe, think about this. Everything begins in Chachmei Law, and then it comes down and becomes Klippas in the Elam Masal Yenim. And when a Yid learns the halachas, b'dibur u'machshava, speaking the halachas, and thinking the halachas, mispartim u'mispartim ya'kedusha. The chayes of the Klippa which comes from Kedusha to these particular theoretical shilas, which have never been manifest, become identified as individual details, and they become separated from Kedusha. And you know what happens then? The good in it is uplifted, and the bad of it goes away. Classic beater. This is beater through Torah. Which costs a bit tikkun v'ray mehemna, like it says in tikkun zeh neray mehemna, la frasha v'chol, to separate the kedusha from the klipa. I suspect that this ray mehemna is the same ray mehemna we had before in Igeres HaKedesh Chavov, but I'm not 1,000% sure. What do you wanted to say something? V'hainu kened, as it is known. The Gemara says, what's wrong with not saying Berachas HaTeirah, and how important it is to yes say Berachas HaTeirah? So it's explained in Chassidus, show the Amshachas, Eidin Sof Bechachmei Law and Lubash Behen. Come to the best, you want to bring down Eidin Sof into Chachma, and if I may add the correct Kabbalistic terminology, it means Gevuras of Atik, where you have that in Butzina de Kardunitza, Tal de Bedolcha, Ubechachma is Beridu, Beidin Sof Shabbat. Chachma does birur, but it's not a chachma stam, it's the Ein Sof, it's the Gevuras of Atik that I'm a vader, which I'm a chachma. Why? So I explained this to you in an earlier shiur. There's a cloud that says, in order to fix something else, you have to be totally fixed yourself. If you the dakas are unfixed, you can't fix. Chochma, especially the Intzavach Chochma, is perfectly fixed, so it fixes. So when you're learning Teira, and especially if you're Baruch Teira, before you learn Teira the Bracha, you mamshach the Intzaf into the Teira, which is perfect. Now you have a koyach to be mavader the Teira with the koyach of the Teira, and you separate out the klip and the Teira, and you kill it. The good goes up and the bad goes away. In other words, could you imagine if Yidden had been learning these halachas thousands of years ago, who knows how many fewer Avedas would have had to have occurred Lamaisa because they're mavader and pasha through limud. So Pikabod is an unbelievable tayalis in learning in Yadam Halacha which are not a libel Lamaisa. Halacha Lamaisa. Once it becomes a Maisa Pale, it's a much more complicated beater. It's tshuva and it's fixing gashmi.
I'm saying through Torah you could be something even if it's extra to come with the Maisa Pearl, but it didn't yet come.
Yeah, of course. Sure. And even more, even if the do come with Maisa Pale, it's not enough the beater of Asiyah, you have to learn the halachas from Mavader also. He said it in the previous Igeres HaKedesh. There's a double beater, side Teire and side Dibur Omais. Log Dal Terebem. This is mentioned, if you're interested, in Kuntas Acharin. I just want to show you how this Alter Rebbe is repeating himself. On top of page 306, the very first Igeres HaKedesh, it says the first line. Remember the first Kuntas Acharin. It says Kamesha Ha'adam Meisik Lamata Kach Diyukin Ha'adam Elyon Lamayla V'chol. He asks the question, what do we accomplish by learning Teira? And he explains that from Birur. How can we fix Ruchni's Dika worlds? And the answer is because when we learn, Diyukin Adam Elyon learns with us. So now we're saying when we are learning the Teira, Adam Elyon is learning with us. And with the Keach of Adam Elyon and Mavara the Birurim through Teira alone. The same Lashon, exactly the same Lashon. Diyukin Ha'elyon Shal Adam Eisik Ank V'lachat El Lamayla B'shar Shei B'nukva Dezad B'yah in Malchus of Zeirampin of the Esesfira Sabiyah. Says the Alter Rebbe, but that you and this explains why there's a chi of kol naran chiv in every Jew. Lahashtem kol atayag machshova dibur ma'aser. Learn all 613 mitzvahs, both in speech, thought, speech and deed. Shein prat halachas, which are the halachas, including those halachas which are not nimshach lamaise utzriches love begilgul. We just mentioned also in the Igeres HaKedesh Chav Zayin or Chav Tes, a person has to come in multiple gilgulim. To complete the Teira in all four levels of Pardes, to fix up all of the sparks which are connected to that individual person. All the 288 sparks, you came as Adam Shleima, which is the construct of a complete Adam. There's 613 details in general and in particular. And therefore, there's a very important reason in learning the whole Teresh Baal Peh. Even Allah Shein and Tzriches. In Allah is not a Gela Maisa because it affects a beater. It's a Moedin Dika Chiddush. A Moedin Dika what the Alter Rebbe says. Now the Alter Rebbe finishes. What can happen when Mashiach comes? So the Birurim are finished. Not just in action, they're finished also in Ruchni. Dr. Avo Lasad Love. This is the end of the Igeres HaKedesh Chav Zayin as well. When Mashiach comes. We're going to finish all the birurim, not only by Maisa but also by Diba and by Machshava. So then, we're going to learn Teira only because to bring down goodness. And then you can ask the question again. So what's going to be the point of learning halachas the leishchichet klala azad laves? So he says, first of all, you learn it lahales and around the ma'ila din sof. You want to lift up kedusha to an even higher level. Every time you learn Teira, you bring down more godliness. And there's even going to be a tiyalas of learning leisaseh, which now is an inyan of birur. Still, there's going to be a point of learning when Mashiach comes. We're lifting them up, b'shashan l'mayla, lifting the shadish l'mayla, shein gevuras kedeshis. Because the real shadish of avedis, of leisaseh, is gevuras of kedusha, which is even higher than chsadim of kedusha. Shein gevuras kedeshis or lamtika, to make them sweet, but chasadim and the chasadim. And of course, Kabbalah says, Eina gevuras nimtakin ela b'shashan. The real way of sweetening gevuras is with gevuras themselves. Like you have Yerei with the Shem Eitz, v'yashnach alamoyim, v'yimteku amoyim. The stick that Moshe Rabbeinu threw into there's different sheet as what that stick was. Some say it was Eitz Chayim, some say it was Harudafni. So it's explained whether he was Mavader gevuras through chasadim or Mavader gevuras through gevuras. And that's really the higher inyan. So we're going to learn Takatei al Yosad Love, and we're going to lift up the license to the Shadish and the Gevuras Lamaila, even though there's no clip at all. But Amach would say the Kolnya, Valkain and therefore, I'll tell you the Kula, the whole Teira, including the licenses, including the Allah of Leshchichiklal, including the Ruchnis, the Klipis that are totally insignificant, Yosad Love, is Nitzchias, Beklalo, Beplatet, eternal. There's always a point in learning every Allah and Teira, even if it has no Shaykhs, not Lamaisa practically, nor for Birurim, because there'll be an Indian from being lifting up Gevuras to their Shadish and Kedush. Shagam prati halacha the Chazal Leisa says. Also the 613, the 365 negative prohibitions, which are details in halacha, also have a shadish, not just in klipa, but in kedusha. Hey, in enough of me'akolos, they're branches of the general rule of mitzvah say and mitzvah leisa say. V'yesh lekulam, and all of them have not only a shadish in klipa, which needs to be fixed, but shadish lamaila, shadish even higher than klipa. Behei gevudas the kedusha, and the 5 gevudas of kedusha, kumei Chazal Leisa atma, like the 365 Avedas themselves. Okay, shein lamaila, because above what the Chazal Leisa said, the bechinas adam, the mystical blood of Elokus, hamachaya evan that gives life to the limbs, the kel, the zav, the vessels of atzilus. So we have here, vaystois 3 madreges in Leisa. First madreg is you don't do the Aveda and you fix it lamata. Second madreg is you learn the Torah and you're fixing it lamaila. And the third madreg is you're learning it in a level which is b'chlal no klipa, you're living up to the higher shadish and gevudas of kedusha. The Alter Rebbe is explaining why Torah is always going to be nitzchi, even such in Yonam of Torah that have no shaychas to ma'aser b'peil mamish, because they're not connected to mitzvahs I say, and we're not afraid of mitzvahs later because there's no klipas anymore. Good.